This is Unity. In game design and, well, game playing, the ability to access new and more challenging levels is a critical component of success. In games nowadays, we primarily see two methods for levels to be loaded. We will walk or travel or roll into a new scene, or an entirely new area will appear where we land in a new rainforest or jump into a new rocket, and the old environment is no longer visible whatsoever. Thankfully, both of these types of scene level transitions are available in Unity. Once you get the hang of it, they are fairly straightforward. This tutorial is perfect for beginners. It is focused on a 2D game. I'm not going to go into the asynchronous aspect of this. I'm going to focus on kind of the foundational components of getting you started game making and to level 2. Alright, that being said, let's look around real quick. Everything on here, I've made all these assets, I'm writing all this code. It'll be posted in the comments, take a look at the code, steal the assets for another game. Whatever you need, go for it. Okay, this is my fancy level 1, right? And level 2, which shall remain a mystery, because its camera's been deleted, because we won't need it. We're going to retain the camera for this level, because we're going to side scroll into it. Level 3 is going to be the level that we use our LoadSceneMode single on, so it will load on top of all the other stuff, getting rid of it. So we will need its own camera, and ba-da! And level over is the end of the game. Lava everywhere. So let's work on getting us to level 2. I do have my player configured with some basic commands. Again, all the code is in the description, just movement commands for the player. I use fixed update for all of the actual movement because that is better for physics if you're not as familiar with Unity yet. Fixed update is more reliable performance from a character, whereas update I use for the input get key, right arrow, left arrow, up and down. This allows update's going to run more frequently. I can more rapidly get the user's input. Fixed update, make sure that input is impacting the player at the same rate on the screen. Anyways, so yep, that's the player's movement. And we need a add scene script. So my add scene right here, you can't see it, boop. Normally I would leave this blank, but right now there's a pink dot in it. Main things you need to know, it has a box collider and it's an is triggered. We're not going to use the normal collision, it acts as a trigger. The very important difference between this and a normal collider is that a collider, a player, or a game object with a rigid body cannot pass through. Well, a game object with a collision, with a collider, cannot pass through. This object, my player, who also has a collider and a rigid body, can pass through it because it is a trigger. We're going to use this item to allow the player to travel to the next scene, to load level 2 or scene 2. So let's get working on a bit of the code that will allow us to do that. I'm going to call this add scene script, I guess, because I'm creative. There we are. Let me make sure it gets put in the right folder. Perfect. All right. So for this, we're going to use a few, we'll use one public variable for this, and it's going to be a public string called scene name. The reason I want to do that is because that will allow me, I'm going to hit save. If I make something public, let me go over here, add scene, it will now appear here in the inspector window. So I could use this, duplicate it, or make a prefab out of it. I could use it a bunch of times and use it to get to different levels. This level we're going to go to over here is level 2, right? Scene 2, level 2. So I'm going to name it that. Now, that means whenever in this code I say scene name, this object will be referencing level 2. The other things I'm going to need are the player and the camera, because we're going to actually have to interact with the camera to make sure it can move and follow the player. Otherwise, loading a scene right next to our player who will never see it makes zero sense. instead of making these public and dropping them in here, which is obviously an option, I know the names of these items, so I was just gonna code them in. So now that I have these two, we aren't going to need our update function for this, strangely, but we won't. What we do need is on trigger enter 2D. Now, again, this is not like on collision. It works in some ways the same, but there's an important difference, and that difference is what I'm about to do. If collision dot, now I don't want to put collider. I'm doing if collision dot name is equal to player. So I'm just double checking that it wasn't a non-playable character that ran into our collider, that ran into our add scene object, right? I want to make sure, hey, is this the player? Because I don't want to load the scene unless it's the player. So if it is the player, when a new scene is loaded, all game objects on the previous scene, even when we are adding a scene, right, we're still going to retain the view of the old scene, but the game objects would get destroyed. So there's a handy little command called don't destroy on load, which makes sure you don't destroy them on load. And what do I want to keep? I'm going to keep player, and I'm going to also keep our camera, because like I showed you earlier, the camera level or scene 2 did not have a camera. Now that I've retained these, I want to go ahead and say scene manager, which I don't have up here yet. So you will need, just going to note this, need this really using Unity engines. What did I do? Oh, I put a space there. Yeah, don't do that. That doesn't make any sense. There we are. All right. So now scene manager, which we haven't even gotten into really, but we will. So we're asking the scene manager to load scene name, LoadSceneMode additive. All right. So scene manager, and what is the scene manager? It's this thing. And scenes in build. This is where we can see those scenes going to be managed. We'll get to that in a sec, but so scene manager, load scene, the scene's name, scene mode additive. And again, that's where we retain the old scene. We can still view this stuff, but we also load the new. Now for the camera. This will work, but we'll never be able to see it. The camera is not being asked to move at all. The camera is going to stay right where it is. So to handle that, I've already coded this in to save time. This is my script that's attached to my camera. I want to point out a few things. Public float xmin, xmax, ymin, ymax. These are public, so we can access them on our camera. Here's my main camera. And this is how far the camera is allowed to move. So we use a mathf clamp method here. What this is doing way down here in move camera, I am looking the player's position, their X position. I am then comparing it to whatever minimum and maximum I have set for the camera over here. And if the player's position is within that minimum and maximum, that becomes X. If it is not, if it is more than the maximum, my actual maximum becomes X, not that number. If it's less, my minimum becomes X, not that number. So it just makes sure that it's within these two numbers or sets it to one of them. Then down here, it sets the transformer of my camera. It moves my camera to this X value and this Y value and the Z value it was already assigned. Meaning it follows the player to a certain extent within the min and max settings I have established. We have it at 0, 0 here because we don't want the camera to move yet. Now, I have this in a void, in a separate function, and I do because, first of all, I want it to be clear what's happening. It is being constantly run through update, but it is checking first if move camera is true. Move camera up here is set to false. When the game starts, I do not want the camera to be able to move. I want that to change in here. To make it so that we can move the camera in here, I'm going to go ahead and do camera.get component camera script move camera, and I'm going to set it equal to true. Because now I know this has been triggered, the player ran into my trigger for this, and I want the camera to be able to move because I just loaded the next scene. The next thing I'm going to want to do is change up the camera min and max. I know the size of my scenes, so I'm going to say, and I also know that I'm going to just Command C for copy and -17. So this looks super long. The easier way to do this, I'll show you in a second, but camera component camera script dot x minimum. So get the x min here. We'll give the camera a new x minimum. What's its new x minimum going to be? It's going to be whatever the camera's old x minimum is, -17 from it. A shorthand for this is just minus equals. It's what I'm going to do. So take away 17 from the old minimum. That's the new x minimum. That will allow our camera to move. All right, let's go ahead and see what I've messed up. I'm gonna hit play. Boop. What-oh. What happened there? Ah, yes. We definitely do need to add the build settings. Boom. What we need to do, File, Build Settings. Notice there's no scenes here yet. I had showed it to you earlier and still decided not to add scenes. I'm going to hit Add Open Scene. Got level 1. Let's go to level 2. Yeah, I'll say what was on level 1. Add Open Scene, level 2. Add Open Scene, level 3. Notice these are the indexes. So when you're trying to loop through, which we'll get to, this is 0, 1, and 2. Those are the numbers, or the scene's numbers. And did I add 3? And no, not build. Open. Perfect. All right, let's head over to level 1 now and play. Whoop. And there we go. It will automatically load in this next level. Now, as levels get larger, you want to be aware that you are probably going to want to use a level destroy function as well. So, with that done, let's make our game over or our level over scene load. To do that, I want to use this same item here, this add scene. And so I'm going to make a prefab out of it. So I'm just going to create a new world. Prefabs are items you can use over and over again. And add scene. Yep. Again, normally I would not have this sprite render on it. I wouldn't want people to be able to see it, but I think it aids the tutorial to have it. Add scene. Okay. And now I'm going to grab this and drop it again up here. Add scene 1 is fine. And I'm going to move it down here. Because I'm going to say, hey, if you hit this lava, you're a goner. And I'll just stretch out the... And now all I should have to do, I don't want it to load level 2. I want it to load level over. And this is another way additive works, right? So this is still the additive method of adding a scene. Right, scene manager, load the scene, here's the name, and here's the approach that we'll be using. And we're going to be using the single load scene mode in a moment. Okay, let's go ahead and test this. Oh no! And so this is a really fun way to make the levels more interactive and respond to player movement, right? So we have this approach where you can add on top of a scene, or we also have an approach up here. It will not work at this moment because we have a second camera now present, and this will only work on the first camera that we had. But it allows us to demonstrate the multiple ways additive can be used to make a game more engaging. Let's talk about the other and possibly more traditional way of loading a level, and that is by wiping out the previous one and loading in the new. To do this, this will share a lot in common with our previous add scene, but it's going to be a bit different. So I'm going to use a prefab, but then I'm going to change it up. Okay, and so I'm going to rename this one single scene, because that's what it's called when we're looking at the load mode. It is single. And that being said, we're also going to need the script to vary some. And so if the script is going to be different, we need to head over to our single scene component, or game object, move it over, and do single script. I'm original. A single scene script. Perfect. So let's go hunt that down, get it into the right folder, and open it up. Here we are. And again, it will share enough in common with our previous script that I will be just copying our add scene script all the way up to here. Copy, single, paste. Okay. Now, what we don't need, our camera does not need to move in a single scene. Okay, my level is within the view of the camera. To get rid of that, and we also need to make sure to bring over our scene management. Let me do Control C for copy, Control V for paste, and let's just save all this. And here's our big change too: load scene mode, single. We want our camera to be destroyed because our new scene has a camera. So goodbye to our camera, but I still want to use the player that I had. I don't need to grab the main camera anymore whatsoever. And I will leave scene name. So let me go ahead and hit save. And let's go back here. Single scene. And single scene, we want to get rid of the add scene. And let's look at the sprite render. Just to make clear, I'm going to make that. Ooh, that's a really ugly yellow. Perfect. And we're going to put it up. Perfect. And the level's name, well, this scene's named is level 3. Let's make sure to save all this. I also build settings. Yes, we have it added. Great. Let me go ahead and hit play. Charge. Oh, and we're here, but notice that we're in some weird spot, right? You would want to spawn where your character is actually loading in. To do that, what we're going to do is you want to have a way to detect if they're moving up, down, left, right. I sometimes will have a different type of trigger for those situations. In this situation, thankfully, I know my character would be moving up. So what I will do is in this script, once the scene loads, I also want to just do a transform position, and I'm going to take their Y value and multiply it by -1, right? I'm going to flip their position. I'll show you what I mean. There's also shorthand to write this, but I think this is more clear. And then, so what I'm doing here is saying, hey, my player, get the position's Y value is negative multiplied by -1, and then set that position for the player. The reason I'm doing that, gotta hit save. Let me click on my player. Right now, my player's Y position is 10. Watch what happens when I make it -10. Whoa. Oh, that's dirt. That's dirt. Just kidding. Player earthquake is -3.5, is 3.5. Now it's negative. Setting something to negative switches where their position is on the screen, up, down, left, right, because it's in quadrants. So this code is grabbing the player's position and flipping their Y position. And I know my player is going to be moving up to hit this. So now, and I pop up where I hit the target. And I have access to this whole other level. Woohoo! Those being the two main ways you are going to be accessing levels, I want to run through a few quick tools that are super useful. Let me hit play, unplay this, assets, and through the magic of the YouTubes, I've gone ahead and added an empty screen checks object. All it has is screen script attached, and I want to hit run on this guy and console, and this is what it's doing. Okay, so active scene is level 1, that would be correct. Scene summary, level 1, loaded, dirty, in build, okay. Let's go through what those are and how this is happening. And again, all of this is in the description, including this code. Most of this is based directly off of some of the helpful documentation on Unity's website. That being said, what do I have going here? Well, scene is equal to the scene manager. I'm grabbing the active screen. I'm outputting that to the screen, letting us know what it is. Now, list scene names. This is something we haven't seen yet. It's this is a function, great. I'm getting a string and I'm saying it's going to be equal to nothing right now. And then if scene manager dot scene count is greater than 0. What this is saying is how many scenes are there? And you can do this using scene manager. We can ask how many scenes are there. And then what we're about to do is use a for loop, start it at 0, say n is going to be less than the number of scenes there are, and n plus plus. This plus plus is going to be happening as we transverse the loop. So the first scene we can hit gets scene at n. What the scene manager is, again, right here. So scene at n, scene at 0, scene at 1, scene at 2, these are the scene index numbers. We're looping through. First thing we do, returns if the scene is loaded. This is going to tell us if it's loaded. If it is, it adds to this result string the word loaded with a parenthesis. Otherwise, say it is not loaded. If it is not loaded, our result string is going to get added not loaded to it. Next if statement. If scene is dirty, scene has not been modified. Is dirty is weird. So if scene has been modified, then it is quote unquote dirty. Otherwise, it is not dirty. So if the scene is dirty, the computer says true, it's been modified, well then our result string will have the word dirty tacked onto it. Otherwise, else, it will be clean. And then finally, if scene build index is greater than 0, returns the scene index if in build setting. So it's making sure that it is present. Let me fix that typo. And if it is, it says right here. If not, it says not in build. Finally, the result equals no more scenes. And so it's looping through the scenes that it can find and debugs scene summary plus result equals okay. And it spits out this. So it's a nice way to go through the scenes that you have within your program. And this is currently only going through the one scene because I have it attached, because where the item is attached to this active object, this game object. Regardless, this is super useful to use in any scene to be able to get a feel for what is going on and to actually see how we can interact, how we can use count, how we can loop, how we can use get scene at index to load our scenes and to have characters interact and play through them. So, hopefully you have some super cool new ways to load your game scenes. I know I do. Go elephant. I'm going to definitely load a water level somewhere over here. Regardless, all of this again is in the description. Feel free to use it however you would like. If you have any questions, let me know in a comment below, or if you want to brag about something super cool you made, also tell me about that below. Oh, and if you are watching, you should hit like, you should hit subscribe. It gives me warm fuzzies and makes me feel like the world is a better place.